Hello everyone, my name is Chaplain Benjamin Brandt, and welcome to Danger Chapel Virtual Services. Every week, we'll be posting a new virtual service that we hope will nourish your soul and strengthen your faith. Well, welcome everyone to another Danger Chapel virtual service. Again, it is such a privilege to put these together for you, and thank you so much for tuning in. I truly hope that they are a blessing to you. I don't know about you, but we are, my partner and I are nearing the end of our tour. We still got some time left, but the end is in sight, and we've been out here a while, and it's getting pretty tiresome, or it has been pretty tiresome. And at times it's felt absolutely exhausting. Like I'm not sure if I've got another step left in me. And my guess is that many of you feel like that, whether you're a green suiter out here like us, or you're back stateside or somewhere else in the world. You've had times, or you're at a time in your life where you are absolutely worn, or you are near worn, and you're tired. And so I want to address that in the text today with Matthew 11:28 through 30. Jesus says, "Come to me and you'll find rest." But before we get there, I want to do a song and just acknowledge the feeling of being worn. So the title of this song is called Worn, and it's by 10th Avenue North. Again, Worn by 10th Avenue North. I hope you enjoy.
My hope fell, my soul feels crushed by the weight of this world, and I know that you can give me rest. So I cry out with all that I have left. Let me see redemption win. Let me know the struggle ends. You can mend a heart that's frail and torn. I wanna know a song can rise from the ashes of a broken life, and all that's dead inside can be reborn. 'Cause I'm worn. I'm too weak, life just won't let up, and I know that you can give me rest. So I cry out with all that I have left. Let me see redemption win. Let me know the struggle ends. You can mend the heart that's frail. A song can rise from the ashes of a broken life, and all that's dead inside can be reborn. 'Cause I'm worn, my prayers are wearing thin. Yeah, I'm worn, and before the day begins, yeah, I'm worn. I've lost my will to fight. I'm worn, so heaven comes. rise from the ashes of a broken life. And all that's dead inside can be reborn. 'Cause I'm warm. I'm warm. Yeah, I'm warm.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. And again, it's good to be with you here this morning. If you got your text with you, go ahead and turn to Matthew 11, and we're going to pick it up in verse 28. In Matthew 11, verse 28. If you're unfamiliar with the Bible, that'd be the first book of the New Testament, roughly 3/4 of the way through. It starts off like this. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All of you, take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Now, I don't know everyone who's out there watching this video, but I am guessing, if we flip back a slide, all of you at one point in your lives, or perhaps right now, are feeling weary and burdened, especially in the midst of this corona stuff in which we've been caught inside and isolated from the communities that give us connection. I'm guessing there's a lot of weary and there's a lot of burden out there. I know I certainly feel it on my end. This sense of tiredness, a sense of fatigue, a sense of carrying this weight around and feeling that it's too heavy and that there's no way I can possibly keep going. The good news for you is that there is a way out of weariness, and there is a way past your burdens. I'll try and illustrate that in a second, and what that might look like. If we read the next few passages, again, this is the first few of chapter 12. I don't have slides for these, but you can just follow along with me. At that time, Jesus passed through the grain fields on the Sabbath. And his disciples were hungry, and they began to pick and eat some heads of grain. So you can picture this. Jesus and his disciples are walking through a field. It's the Sabbath, which means it's the day of rest for Jesus and his disciples and really his whole nation. This is a very sacred, this is a very special day, as you can see by the reaction here. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." How dare they pick some grains and rub them in their hands and eat some food? How dare they? That's work. They can't do it. If you do this, God is going to be furious with you. That's really what the Pharisees are concerned about. They think if you keep picking grains on the Sabbath, God is going to be furious with you. We don't do this because we don't want God to be furious at us. Why in God's name would you pick grain on the Sabbath? And look at Jesus' response. He said, "Haven't you read what David did when he and those with him were hungry? How he entered the house of God. They ate the sacred bread, which was not lawful for him or for those with him to eat, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent?" So what's Jesus referring to here? And then I'll finish out the paragraph. Jesus is bringing up two examples from the law, which these Pharisees are so deeply concerned about. Two exceptions to what they consider to be their norm. He said, don't you remember when David entered the house of God and ate the bread? That was not lawful for him, and yet he did it, and God did not strike him down. God didn't punish him for it. Or don't the priests on every Sabbath, when priests are working, does God strike them down? Well, no, he doesn't. So there seems to be a misunderstanding between how the Pharisees have interpreted the law and how Jesus understands it. And Jesus says this, but I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. And here's this next line. Here I think is the kicker. If you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, then you would not have condemned the innocent. If you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, then you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So let me tie that into the section we read right before that. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come to me. Take up my yoke upon you, because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He says, because I am gentle and humble in heart. Is that you of us, we who are out there who feel burdened and weary, is that how we tend to think about God? Do we tend to think about him as gentle and humble? Are those typically attributes that we ascribe to God? I would say for many of us, our gut instinct is no. For many of us, we don't tend to think about God as gentle and humble. Rather, we tend to think about him as rather fierce and critical. And my guess is the reason that we do that is because your inner critic is so harsh. Your inner critic is so lacking in compassion. You may have boundless compassion for other people, but for yourself, you have none. And so because of that, my guess is, like me, you have a tendency to ascribe that harsh criticism to God. And maybe you've been taught that. I know I've certainly picked up that feeling from many sermons I've heard. But what does this text say? It says, this is Jesus. This is God in the flesh, is it not? And he says, I am gentle and humble. Moreover, what did we just read? He said, Pharisees, had you understood this phrase, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Had they understood that, they may have understood the character of God in a much better way. But you see, the Pharisees, they are such harsh critics of themselves. And in turn, they are such harsh critics of their peers, of their fellow countrymen and women. And because of that, there's no joy in their life. All they feel is this deep and heavy burden. All they feel is weariness. And if you feel that deep and heavy burden, the deep, heavy burden of shame, of isolation, of condemnation, then my encouragement to you is, I think you've taken the wrong yoke upon yourself, to use Jesus' words. I don't think you've been carrying Jesus' yoke. It says his yoke is easy and his burden is light. So, let me put it in words like this. My guess is, if you feel burdened and weary, it is because you have a deep feeling of unworthiness. You believe you are unworthy of God's love. You believe that you are unworthy of God's grace. I think you're wrong, and I think I'm wrong too when I believe that, because I have believed that so many times and so often. This sincere, deeply held belief that I'm unworthy of God, but He has taken pity upon me. But I mean, really examine the story for a second. In the beginning, God creates heaven and earth, and He says humanity is good, that He delights in humanity, that He delights in all creation. And when humanity falls, is God's response to blow it up and start again? No, because you're still here. What does that mean? It means God believes that humanity is worth saving. In all of our flaws, in all of our imperfections, God believes that we are worth saving. God believes that you are worth saving. He believes that you are worth it, i.e., you are worthy of His love. God has freely chosen to love you, and He believes you are worthy of that love. It doesn't mean we're perfect. God knows we're not. So do you, so do I. And yet, despite all of our flaws, despite all of our imperfections, Jesus comes, God becomes human and enters our world, lives among us, and doesn't see us as these unworthy mongrels, but says, yes, they are worth becoming human for. They are worth dying for. They are worth rising for. I'll do everything for them. And so if you are out there this morning and you feel unworthy, you think you are not worthy of God's love, I think you have misunderstood God's love, as have I. I think you have misunderstood your identity as a human. I think you've misunderstood your identity as one of God's creatures. God loves you, not because you're some pitiful mongrel. He loves you because you're His. And you are worthy of His love. You have this original goodness about you that can't be taken from you. And no matter how deep and wide you think your sins are, you are still worth it to God. That is the yoke of Jesus, I believe. That is the burden. It is allowing yourself to be loved by Jesus exactly as you are. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try and change those parts of you that ought to change, those sinful parts of your heart. It doesn't mean Jesus isn't at work in you to make you better. But it means apart, regardless of what you have done or what you have not done, you are inherently worthy, according to God, of His love, of His mercy, of His grace. He loves you. So I encourage you, if you are weary and burdened, I think you've been carrying the wrong burden. I think you've put yourself under the wrong yoke. You don't have to be perfect. You're already good enough to be loved by God. Rest in His grace. Rest in His love. Rest in His boundless compassion for you as His long-lost son or daughter. He truly does love you, and you are already good enough to be loved by God. Would you pray with me? Father God, thank you for your love. Thank you for your mercy for our failures, but thank you for your love. That you love us regardless of our actions, that you see us as worthy of your love, that we are worth saving in your eyes. So keep saving us, keep leaving the 99 to come gather us up. And when we are lost, help us, come find us that we might be found again. We need you. Please continue this great work that you have begun. May we rest and lay down our burdens and rest in you. In you I hope and pray. Amen. I want to end with one more song. I highly encourage you to YouTube this song and find it in its original format. The song is called Lay My Burdens, and it's by a band named Disciple. If you enjoy rock, this is a song for you. They do a phenomenal job, and this song has gotten me through some dark times behind me and probably more ahead of me. Again, the song is called Lay My Burdens, and it's by Disciple. As I sing this, and if you choose to listen, just remember you're already enough. You're already worthy. You are already loved. And so lay down the burden of having to prove yourself, of having to make yourself worthy before God. You're already good enough for His love.
Picture on the wall again, reminding me just how far away I've been. I'm looking to lay my burdens down. There's something I can't carry anymore. I'm longing to lay my body down beside still waters and find rest for my soul. My knees are weak and my mind is tired. I followed every dream of every liar. There's a place that you prepared for me that I belong. Let these dry bones arise to live and breathe your song. I'm looking to lay my burdens down. There's something I can't carry anymore. I'm longing to lay my body down beside still waters and find rest for my soul. I'm looking to lay my burdens down. It's something I can't carry anymore. I'm longing to lay my body down beside still waters and find rest for my soul.
Again, I highly recommend you give that one a look up and check out the music video. It's pretty good, and the way that they've instrumented it is quite incredible, at least to my ears, and does far more justice than a guy on an acoustic can do. But if you're out there and you're tired and you're weary and you're worn, you're not alone. Goodness knows you are not alone. You are not the only one feeling tired and beaten down. And if, like me, your weariness and the pain you're feeling is because you falsely believed that you had to make yourself good enough to be worthy of God, lay that burden down, because you're already good enough. You are already worthy of His love. That is yours because you are. That is yours because you are His. That is yours because you are a human. You are inherently lovely and worthy and loved by God. So lay that burden down and rest in His love. As you do, may God bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you, and may He give you peace. Love you all. We'll see you next week.